Namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to talk about our transit with Mars in Taurus coming together with the North Node Rahu. So I did do a video on this when Mars originally moved into Taurus, where I talked about what the energy would be like, and I actually even went through that with all of the rising signs. So that was also when Mercury was retrograde. There was several different things going on at that time. I wanted to do this video because they're getting closer in the sky. So the nodes move backwards, Rahu's moving backwards, and Mars is moving forward, and they're coming into conjunction with each other. They're getting to a closer point. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here so that you can see on the chart what I'm talking about. So here we have Mars at 1648 in Rohini and Rahu's at 1929 in Rohini. So Mars is moving forward as the planets do, unless they're perceived in their retrograde state. And then the nodes move backwards. So they're moving towards each other, which whenever that's happening, the energy is building. Once there's been a conjunction between two planets, the passing of the conjunction actually starts to diffuse the energy right away. But the building up to it brings it to its height. And in this case, we've been sitting with this alignment, like I said, for I think about a month now, perhaps a little bit longer. I think it's been about a month. I can't remember exactly the day that it moved in right now. But this expansion, this Rahu energy, is really starting to disperse and expand the Mars energy. And that's really what I want to focus on this time, as opposed to just Mars in Taurus. But just to refresh our memory, Mars in Taurus is, feels a little bit out of sorts because Taurus is Venus's sign, and Taurus is more about pleasure and enjoying the journey, stopping to smell the flowers. There's less discipline here than Mars prefers. Mars likes to be in a sign where he can really, show up in a very physical way on a regular basis in a fashion that is the same every time. And the reason for that is that Mars has this quality of being like the general of the army. So the capacity to really shine comes from this regularity, this regulation. It calms the part that's anger and channels the part that's discipline and courage into something, into a productive means. So the fact that Taurus is an earth sign is helpful because there is a physical quality here. There's a capacity to actually, put your hands in the dirt, garden, cook, do things that are physical, tangible projects. The problem is they're less likely to be disciplined. They're more likely to come from a place of pleasure, connection, and sensuality. And Mars can get a little over-sexualized when Mars is in Taurus. Our passion nature is really feeling the Venusian quality of Taurus, and that deep desire that Taurus has to, to touch and be touched. And then that quality of Mars can get over sensualized because the fixation is always on the physical with Mars, and it's always on the, where's it going? Where's this energy going? In the earth sign of Capricorn over here, Mars is exalted because there's a long-term vision and it's very productive. It's very much about getting to that end and having that end be safe, secure, practical, and survival based. Mars does really well in those situations, just like a general of an army does really good at keeping the army together in order to fight a battle that has a very specific purpose, reason, and means of doing that. But in Taurus, we don't have as much of those confines as there are in Capricorn. There's a lot more fluidity of movement that just happens from being in the moment. There's a lot more presence, but a lot less of a plan. And that can get Mars a little hung up. It can cause our sense of action, our sense of discipline to feel like it doesn't have a purpose or there's no reason. It's just kind of meandering. And that can be pretty challenging for us to experience. Rahu is the airy quality that literally disperses whatever is joined it, or wherever that energy is. It has a dispersing quality. And it has a quality also of sort of voraciously taking in new experience. Rahu's where we are learning new karma, we're opening up new karma, and we're also really not taking a lot of advice or heeding any caution. We're kind of just going for it. And the result of that immature quality, where we're just wanting to experience and learn through trial and error, mixed with the energy of Mars, can obviously cause us some issues, right? First of all, there's that passion quality I was just talking about, where there's a lot of trial and error being involved, a lot of newness coming in, which can be exciting and fun and passionate, but also sort of take us wayward from our point of what we're doing, the point of our actions. And what happens with the sign of Taurus is that there's this kind of plodding quality of just going along and going along and going along. But at some point, if something angers Taurus, they see red, right? That quality of the bull that brings them into the ring, that makes them an animal that anyone would want to bring into a ring, is that it's known that if you plod them, if you keep poking them, they're going to fight. And Mars being there, it's like a constant poker right on the bull, and a red, thing being flown in front of them. So this quality of snapping on a dime is really possible here. Now, for each of us, this does fall in a different house. And so that was one of the reasons I kind of went through Mars for each of the signs in that previous video, because I really, and I'll go ahead and actually put a link to that video beneath here, because I think that it could be helpful to hear that for each sign, what it's bringing up. Personally, I am a Taurus rising. So having this alignment right on my rising sign, I really feel it in my body. I really feel the energy of both the fire from Mars and that air quality, that sort of nervous, anxious Rahu quality on my person. And it's not a natal placement for me. It's not something I'm used to having. I don't have either of those I don't have anything on my rising sign normally, but I definitely don't have either of those things super prominent for me. So it is very unnerving, actually. And I've had to do a lot of different things in order to balance that energy. And so that's really why I want to share, because while it's directly on my person, so it's very obvious for me, for most of us, it's in a different part of your life. And wherever it is in your life, you're going to be feeling that fire, and also that kind of like, potentially blaming others for your lack of discipline, right? Blaming others for your lack of courage, blaming others for your lack of determination, because that's what happens when Mars is in Venus's signs. Is we can, rather than looking at our own lack of these things, this courage, this discipline, this determination, we have a tendency to blame others for keeping us from it, because our relationships with them are somehow holding us back. And that's how we view it. But of course, it's our choice, our relationship with ourselves, our own relationship with our own courage, our own discipline, our own determination, that's actually keeping us from it. It's not anyone else's fault if we don't hold to our own discipline, right? That's on us. So it's something that can become really challenging as Rahu moves closer in, because Rahu gives us this delusion. It gives us this illusion and delusion that everything's different than it is. So we're not seeing things clearly. We're seeing them through this shadow graha that is mutating it and making us see it in this foreign way. So we're not seeing clearly what's happening. We're seeing things from this delusion, and everyone is experiencing this, but it's in a different area of your life. So if you're a Leo, for example, this is your 10th house. So this is happening in your house of career. Guaranteed there's some fire there, a little bit extra courage and determination for sure, but also a lot of confusion about it, and a lot of expanding of the part where we feel separate from that discipline, separate from that courage. Rahu, Mars, as they get closer and closer and closer, can be quite an explosive experience, because Rahu's where we're expanding things out into the world and really making mistakes in the world, in our actions, in our choices, and the decisions we're making. We're actually doing things. We're creating new karma. Literally, karma is action. So we're creating new things that we're doing that are going to affect our future choices. And Mars, again, can be that snap on a dime, especially in sleepy Taurus, where we don't really expect it, where it's kind of coming along and we're just plodding along and everything's fine. All of a sudden, it's like, bam, something just happened. So this quality is super important. The other thing to realize is it's not just in a house, but it's also ruling planets for everybody. So that's the other reason why I say, go back to that video, because I really talk about that in that video. But Mars for, a Taurus rising like myself is the 7th Lord and the 12th Lord. So it's going to be really about other people. It's going to have a lot to do with other people literally being on your person and trying to rile you up. Talk about feeling like you're being poked and prodded, right? Or having a red cape in front of you. It's very pronounced. And so you have to take disciplined actions, choices that help you alleviate that energy. For the Leo example, it's the 4th and 9th Lord. And I happen to know several Leos who have had car problems. The 4th house is the house of home, and it's also the house of our vehicles. And I've seen several people in their attempts to be responsible adults have their cars explode. And I actually had somebody in front of me. I have no idea what his rising sign was because he was just driving, but his car literally started to disassemble in front of me on a very windy mountainous road. Fortunately, I saw it. And fortunately, I had been in a place of really recognizing the Mars Rahu energy. And so I was really trying to, I started my drive in prayer, and I was on the lookout for what I thought would be like maybe dangerous drivers, people driving too fast, too angry. I didn't expect someone's car to just start flying pieces off of it while I was driving, but I was able to slow down, and he was lucky enough to be at a place where he could kind of get to the shoulder. So, certainly just seeing that energy, those two energies come together, you have to be aware that there's going to be that energy for everybody. And it is in a different place in their life, but that the underlying current of expanding anger is there. And we need to be on the lookout for that when we're driving, or when we're in the store, or when we're dealing with people, we're dealing with, customers or bosses or coworkers or whatever our life looks like. That's present, that's there. And certainly it can bring accidents and danger, especially if we're not really kind of expecting it. We're trying to enjoy the more pleasurable variations on this. And then something happens and we're not, we're taken off guard. For Gemini people, this is in the 12th house. So there can be a lot of escapism here. Mars in the 12th house in general can be, addictive qualities and things like that. And you bring in the Rahu and it just expands that. It just makes it be an obsessive quality where you're sort of almost obsessed with that. And it's also the 6th Lord and the 11th Lord. So it shows how there's a lot of, there can be arguments in community. There can be issues with the highest ambitions, can really create some illness, some enemies, some debts for people, for Gemini people. And having it in the 12th house, it's sort of through this escaping quality that they're experiencing this. So through sort of checking out in a way, they're going to be creating, that's how they're experiencing their highest ambitions, and they're through disappointment. And it's also how they're experiencing the 6th house energy. And that's actually in that case of Viparit Raja Yoga, where the escapism is actually keeping them from having some of the enemies and debts and illness. It's actually helping them prevent having to experience that hard work. So again, each person's going to have that experience, and need to check in with themselves as to where it's specifically happening. But overall, what we can do is work with the elements. So in the practice of Ayurveda, which is used in conjunction with Jyotish, with Vedic astrology, we work with the elemental causes of things and we try to balance them. So Mars is typically very pitta. It's very fiery. It's an energy that's going to raise our internal fire. We can create problems with our stomach. Usually digestion is really solid with Pitta people. They process their food very quickly and very easily. But when there's an imbalance of Pitta, there can be stomach issues. There can mean anything from ulcers to actually like Crohn's disease or something very serious. For women, when we have our moon cycle, we have some of those qualities already going on for us, already happening. But that Mars quality is really going to ask of us to limit how much oily or spicy food we eat. You know, Pitta quality is it's both fire and water. And it's that oily quality. If you eat things that are greasy or fried, or coffee, things that are acidic, and things that are spicy, you're going to be increasing that quality of pitta. So that's going to be something to check out, to make sure that you're being really aware of. Also, there's choices we can make with our exercise. You know, there's twisting, so that we can wring out that center split from the solar plexus. Back bends can help decrease the inflammation, and the part of us that gets stuck is right through our center. And you can't see in the whole video here, but right where your solar plexus is, if you put your hands there, you can feel how your stomach is in this moment. And it's going to depend, first of all, what house this is for you. You know, obviously, like I said, this is for me on my rising sign. So it's really a lot to do with my body. But also it's going to have to do with your diet, because I am aware of these things. I've been trying to take it easy on things like spicy food and coffee and acidic stuff. So I've been balancing this energy for many days now, not just in this moment. But you can feel for yourself how you're feeling in that area, in that solar plexus, through your stomach, through your digestive system. Note what you're feeling. When we have a lot of imbalance in pitta, we tend to have stuck or stiff middle back. That tends to be where we feel stiff. So those back bends can help open that area up. And the twists also open, but they kind of wring out that energy of tension that we can feel, built up tension. And that's really what can happen here, is that we're not honoring it as we go. So we're needing to wring it out, because it's not being channeled properly. The Mars energy is not properly being channeled, and it really can't be channeled when Rahu's joined it, right? So even Mars in his exaltation state in Capricorn, if Rahu were to join it, it's literally taking away the channel. It's dispersing it and spreading it out and sending that anger out into the world. And the point with Mars is to self-discipline, not to run around disciplining everyone else. So that sending out of the fire can be very dangerous. And we might actually literally see fires. I know there was a volcanic eruption in Iceland of something. I mean, it had been like 6,000 years or something since this volcano had erupted. And in the region, it had even been hundreds and hundreds of years before it erupted. So I know there's, been a lot of cold weather, and I'm in Hawaii, and there's been a lot of rain, but we did have a bout of heat over the weekend. And I've heard also that from people on the mainland that there's been, heat spells or heat waves, and that they're anticipating another cold spell. This time of year is always tricky that way, whether or not it's hot, whether or not it's cold, is always kind of vacillating, as we just crossed into spring. We just crossed over the spring equinox. So that fiery quality and that dispersion of quality is something to look out for sure, especially because it's in an earth sign, right? So it could actually literally be the earth that has a fire. But also each of us will see that happening in our own way, in our own body, in our own life. So Rahu energy is very vata. It's this air quality, right? As I've said. So one of the ways I mitigate Rahu energy is through pranayama, through breath control practices. And generally speaking, with something like Mars Rahu, we want to avoid things like breath of fire. I generally do breath of fire every morning when I'm not on my moon cycle, but I'm not trying to do that right now. I'm not trying to raise the breath of fire. I'm not trying to, increase my heat and also create more of this spacey quality or this out there energy, right? There's enough out there and there's enough heat. I'm trying to draw myself in. So things like Nadi Shodhana breathing, where your alternate nostril breath, calm, deep, steady breath, even Satali breathing, which is a cooling breath where you use your teeth or you roll your tongue to suck the air in, and then you calmly exhale out your nose. I have some videos on these breaths, and you can find them on my YouTube channel, or you can reach out to me and ask me for them if you don't know these breaths already. But these kind of ways of channeling yourself and calming yourself and bringing yourself into a state where you can be disciplined and making your discipline practice really fit where you're at. because this is on my rising sign, I've had too much fire to do too calm of a practice. Like to just sit and meditate is almost an insane question or request to ask of somebody. Like if this was a natal alignment, having Mars Rahu in my rising sign, it'd be very hard for me to sit still on a regular basis. But as things were for me this particular weekend, I was participating in and teaching in a conference. And it was a really big deal for me and the people who were participating, my fellow teachers, because it was all something that we were doing for like the first time in this big conference. We'd been invited by our teacher. And that need to kind of sit still and regulate and be in front of a computer for hours on end, which is not something I choose to do mostly in my life. I choose to spend a lot of time in nature. You know, was something that was a big task of me. You know, it was asking a lot of me with this alignment. So I had to really focus my yoga practice into taking that Mars energy, meeting it where it was at, you know, doing some fiery stuff, but holding it. So instead of like doing push-ups, I held plank for 5 minutes, you know, instead of really moving quickly, which the Rahu's wanting me to do, I tried to do things calm, steady, and hold the thing. So I'm still meeting the fire where I need to meet the fire, but I'm trying to center it and focus it and use that quality of Taurus, which thank heavens Rahu is in Taurus right now. So we have a capacity to ground through the dispersion. Because the earth signs really do root us to the earth, it's easier to ground when the North Node is in an earth sign than it is when it's in, you know, especially a water, an air sign or a fire sign. So that capacity that I already have innately, and that also is present through the sign of Taurus for all of us, is there. And the earthing quality, you know, because of the fact that I live in Hawaii, the time zone difference was such that this was actually happening very early in the day for me, which was super fortunate because it's still really cold in the mornings and rainy and wet. So I didn't have this blazing heat on me on top of it of having to, you know, be inside and be on a computer. And then I was able to go to the ocean afterwards and refresh myself and bring myself into water, because water can be something that can ground, not ground, excuse me, that's not the right word, but it can refresh the Mars energy and also sort of drown some of that dispersion, that air quality. So when we're in water, it brings us back to a more stagnated element, an element that's closer to the earth. And the fire also gets calmed by the coolness and wetness of the water. So any kind of nature, you know, wherever you live, if you live in a mountainous region, you live in a forest region, you live near the ocean, you know, really except for the desert. If you live in the desert, I don't know what the temperatures are at this moment, but if it's really hot and you're in the desert, then this is not going to be very easy to work with the outdoors, and probably indoors is better. But if it's still a little chilly in whatever desert region you live, then it can be very grounding to touch the rocks and to be out, you know, or especially go out in the early morning or in the evening when it's cooler. So those are ways that I balance that energy. And just to share that. And the other thing I really want to talk about is the fact that the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and she has just moved into her exaltation sign in Pisces. So we have this capacity to really elevate our concept of love and relationships beyond this sort of immediate need for you know, results on our efforts, where we have to compromise and someone does this and then someone does this and then someone does this and then someone does this. That's that really Venusian quality that makes relationships work in the real world, but it keeps it pretty mundane. It keeps it in this sort of tit for tat. You do something, I do something. Let's keep it fair. Well, in the sign of Pisces, we move beyond that. We start to elevate our idea of love. We start to elevate our idea of happiness and even of compromise. We recognize that the more love there is in the world, the more love there is everywhere. It's literally exponential. It grows at an exponential rate. It does not require an immediate return on your investment from someone. And actually, we start to see how those kind of things can keep us really locked into a mental state of the other person is providing our happiness. Whereas when we move into this place, we can really see how it's not about the other person at all. It's about our love for God. And it's about our love for source or goddess, love, energy, whatever you want to call it. It's about seeing that in other people. If you can see, if you don't see the God in all, then you don't see God at all. Something like that. If you don't see God in all, then you don't see God at all. I can't think of who said that quote in this moment. But that is, it might even have been Yogi Bhajan who said that, but I can't actually think of who it was in this moment. But that's a very good quote for the Venus in Pisces. But we can also see Venus is in very close degrees to the sun here, right? We have the sun at 814 and Venus at 721. So it's super combust, which means that its closeness to the sun is actually creating a situation where we might feel unappreciated, right? If Venus was in any other sign, this would be a big issue where we would be feeling like, oh, I'm not being appreciated enough. I'm not being valued enough. I'm not being met with my own energies that I'm putting out there. I'm putting out all this energy and it's not coming back to me. That can be the feeling of Venus close to the sun, combust. But this quality of being in Pisces, first of all, makes the sun a lot less oppressive, right? The sun is more watered down and not as brilliant rays really shining everywhere. But it also really allows the mystical quality to come out because Venus is literally merging with consciousness. With the sun is our straw, our connection to God and our connection to consciousness. And Venus being so close to that is finding that merging through that. And because it's the quality of realizing that our attachments to individual people doing something for us or appreciating us that way is literally what we're learning with Venus and Pisces. It isn't as rough of a combustion as we might normally see. It's also helping this here, Mars Rahu, because Venus is the ruler and it's in its state of exaltation. We're more able to elevate our actions here and move out of just the lust or move out of just the passion part of Mars and really see how it can be a collective communal action. It's, you know, it's 11 houses from itself. So there's this, you know, from where Mars and Rahu are. So there's this quality of seeing our, you know, passionate energy out in the world a little bit, out in community, and allowing our love for the greater, for the wider population or the wider society that we're part of to really fuel our passion and really help us make strides in that direction. In the way we want to see the world grow and make practical strides. You know, the wonderful thing about Mars and any earth sign is that there's a practical quality where we actually do something. We're not just all fired up. We actually make things happen. We do things. We take steps and they might be slower in Taurus than Mars wants, but there are steps nonetheless. Something is happening somewhere. And we just don't want to get lost in where our energy's going. Are our steps leading somewhere? Or are our steps kind of all over the place? Well, if we tune into why we're doing what we're doing and what's really motivating it, and it's really connected to source and really connected to our sense of a higher power, we're going to be much more likely to, you know, to take steps that do actually go somewhere or lead somewhere that we need them or want them to go. We do have a drishti from Jupiter coming here to Mars and Rahu. And you can see in this moment, the ascendant is actually here too, just while I'm doing this. But that drishti from Jupiter is not super close degrees yet. It's at 27 degrees, right? So Mars will have to move in closer to there. Rahu's already been in the later degrees. Again, Rahu's moving backwards. So when Mars moves past Rahu, we'll see the Jupiter drishti be a little stronger on that Mars, on that action where we're really bringing with it our principles and our hopes and our beliefs. Of course, there are principles, hopes, and beliefs that are in Capricorn, so they're less expansive and less optimistic and less hopeful, and more connected to the severities of life or the strict restrictions and the qualities that keep us safe than they are the qualities that raise us up higher to God, as Jupiter likes to do. But it's joined as ruler here, Saturn. I've talked about this ad nauseum over the last, 4 months, 5 months, whenever, since November, when Jupiter first moved into Saturn sign of Capricorn. So I'm not going to get too into that now, but obviously Saturn being joined Jupiter does help quite a bit because he's in his own sign. So it gives us some sense of the solitude, meditation, and the quality of detachment that we might need in order to make good choices. But when that drishti gets closer, we'll see that a little bit more. The one thing I wanted to do was just see when we're going to get these two in exact degrees. And I haven't actually looked yet. So I just wanted to see. Okay, Rahu 18, Mars is already past there. So we need to see, we're getting pretty close here. Okay, so right about on the 26th of March, 25th, 26th of March. I mean, at this point, by the 27th, it'll be past. So this is really going to be the heat struggle, Mars 26th, or excuse me, March 26th. And as I'm making this today, it's the 21st, the 22nd, actually. So this is only 4 days away, this heat. Like, we're really leading up to this fiery heat moment. And it's something to be really aware of, just to know that there is a quality of extreme intense fire and air potential. And it's in all of us, and it's in a certain place in your life in all of us. Again, I'll post that link if you want to watch the video and find out what area of your life it's in, but many of you might already know what Mars rules. This is all by Vedic timing, not by the Western system. So it's, if it's going to be accurate, it's got to, and it's something that really, really needs to be mitigated through physical choices in the outside world. So really limiting things that are going to raise that up. Again, oil, heat, too much heat is not going to be good in your food, right? Or even in your environment. And really channeling your energy through disciplined practices, but keeping them somewhat calm and focused, not, maybe this isn't the best time to do things like Kundalini yoga, where you really move yourself up and get yourself into a tizzy. This is a really good time to do things that are more centering and calming, still meeting that Mars where it needs to be, but stabilizing it a lot more. Things like Tai Chi could be really useful too, where you're meeting that Rahu quality, depending on your own natural imbalance. If you tend to have more of an air imbalance, you might need to really bring that in more. If you tend to have more of a fire imbalance, you might need to bring that in more. But when the nodes join a planet, they really take on the qualities of that. So Rahu is going to be taking on more of the Mars energy than the other way around. And the other thing, and Saturn's also giving drishti here to this Venus and Sun, by the way. Saturn's in his own sign though, so that is a little bit of a damper on the experience of connection to source, the experience of connection to God, because Saturn's that planet that's always kind of like, well, no, that's not how it is. It's really much more nihilistic than that. It's much more, it's much more solitary and sad than that. Saturn brings up our fears, and it brings up our sense of, like I said, detachment, but it can be kind of a cold detachment. It can be a very cold energy. And that we've been experiencing since January of last year, that coldness and that sadness and that fear that we've all been collectively reckoning with, is in fairly close degrees, 1648 to this Venus Sun conjunction. Oh, look, and when these two are exact, look, these two are exact too. That's really, that's pretty intense. And then Saturn's giving that sort of negative, disapproving energy of like, well, it's not all God, it's not all love, it's not all bhakti, it's also a lot of pain and suffering. So this, these things are things to look out for too, these drishtis, this one-way drishti from Jupiter onto this, and this one-way drishti from Saturn here. And again, this is not the most optimistic Jupiter, so it's not really that uplifting at the end of the day. The grace is really flowing here with this exalted Venus, finding our relationship to source through love, through putting our love out there, our happiness out there. And whatever Venus rules for you will also come into play here, whatever houses Venus rules for you. So again, for me as a Taurus, that's my ruling planet also. So it's going to be all about reaching into community and the higher social issues that matter. But for each person, it'll be something different. So I hope this was helpful, and take care of yourself, take care of others out there, really be patient and compassionate with yourself and with others, because we really can't, you can't know where they're coming from necessarily. And things might happen, like that person's car just exploding in front of me. Just be on the lookout, try to calm your sense of pace, move slower, and do some of these balancing techniques I talked about. And I'll see you real soon for the next forecast. coming up here in just a few days, about a week. Have a good day. Namaste.